All right, everybody, welcome to a special impromptu bonus episode of Talkin' Ball Live with Pat Leonard. I felt compelled to come back on with all of you Giants and NFL fans because it was a news-filled day in East Rutherford at Giants practice. But the family's at the Yankee game right now, so I had some time to sit down, and I wanted to share with you directly updates on Malik Nabers, Drew Lock, Evan Neal, the Giants practice, where everything stands with this team as it heads into week 2 against the Houston Texans, and week 1 of the regular season in early September continues to approach quickly, right? We get to this type of time of training camp, the dog days, so to speak, and it always feels like it ramps up a little quicker than you remember up to the games that count. So let's start with Malik Nabers, the update from practice where I was on the practice field for the full hour and a half or so session that Brian Daboll's team ran. Malik Nabers, the number 6 overall pick, explosive receiver so far in camp. The Giants' initial belief is that he has a minor sprain to his left ankle. Now, of course, players receive follow-up examinations. They have to go for more testing in these types of situations. They come off the field and get examined and looked at. But then, of course, better safe than sorry, but especially because the context of the Giants' recent injury history is that initial updates have not always told the full story. We had Evan Neal coming off the physically unable to perform list for individual drills in this practice. Of course, no one needs to be reminded that his injury last season initially was called a sprain, and it turned out he was rehabbing it as a sprain when he had a fracture. He had surgery in early January and now is only now returning to practice in training camp with the hopes of contributing this season. We'll get into that during this Talkin' Ball Live. And then obviously more recently, Drew Lock's situation, the Giants' backup quarterback getting injured in the preseason opener. And the initial report from GM Joe Shane on the broadcast, as relayed to him by whoever was giving him the injury updates internally, was that Drew Lock looked like he was going to be okay, and that he even was able to go back into that game if he was needed. But of course, we find out later, day after, that Drew Lock is not okay, that he has a hip pointer or a bruised hip and also a strained oblique, and he's going to be out at least a couple weeks sometime, really an undefined timetable there. We'll get into Drew Lock. We'll get into what the Giants plan to do at quarterback. We'll talk about that. Just wanted to share my observations directly from the field on Nabers right up front, though, because I know nowadays what happens is we put the news out from training camp, what we're seeing and what's happening. And then a lot of aggregators get a hold of it, and people who are not at practice start weighing in, start appropriating that information as their own. And you see a lot of different characterizations. And so my job, I feel, is just to bring you guys the nuts and bolts of what I saw. And so what I saw was, after a play on which there was nobody out there who really saw the injury occur, but I saw, and a few of others, we witnessed Malik Nabers walk behind the huddle back to a trainer behind the first team offense during an 11-on-11 period. He was limping. He reached down at his foot. Then he untied and took off his left cleat. And then he started rubbing the top of his left foot, kind of on the side, on the top of his left foot. So if you can picture somebody rubbing sand off the top of their foot when they're coming off the beach in the summertime, it almost looked like that, but he was in clear discomfort and then limped slowly to the sideline with the trainer, sat down on the grass, took his sock off so he was barefoot, was being examined by 3 trainers, including Ronnie Barnes. And then when he stood up after the quick examination right there on the field, he was moving extremely slowly in clear discomfort, limping towards the sideline to watch practice. And he ended up just hopping up on top of an equipment chest and sitting there with his leg outstretched so that he wasn't putting any weight on it. Interestingly enough, he did an interview that was scheduled with FanDuel with Kay Adams after the practice, even though he was not available to the local media. He was not asked, at least from what I saw in the video that Kay Adams did in that interview, he was not asked about his ankle or his foot or the injury, but there is an injury there. The question now, of course, is how long does this hold him out? We'll get into that. We'll talk about timelines. I'll answer all your questions. Remember to purchase a super chat or super sticker to elevate your comment or question to the top of the chat. It's a great way to support the podcast and Talking Ball Live. Otherwise, if you don't want to purchase a super chat or super sticker, you can just hit the like button or subscribe or both when you are here, because those subscriptions will give you notifications when we're going live and posting new content and new podcasts coming, as they are this week on the channel, PL on NFL. And if not, just leave a comment or listen in. Even if you're just here to listen into more information about your Giants and about NFL football and about the upcoming season ahead, we welcome that. First, going to tell you about some of the sponsors, and then we'll get right to the questions. I see everybody loading into the queue. Joel, Welvin, D-Kit, Candyman, G-Man, I see you all there, Michael. So we'll get to your questions very quickly. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, thanks for checking in as well. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement right here over my shoulder into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen right here, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Again, go to boomchaga.com, either use that QR code or type in Talking Ball 25. That's on the subscribe and save order. So instead of a one-time order, go to subscribe and save, type in the Talking Ball 25 code, get it at a discount, and then you can just cancel out the subscription. No obligations there. Also brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics, baseball, Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game is over, head on to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. It takes me less than 10 seconds, not kidding, to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee, and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte from this all-natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. That's estate98.com/talkinball. Also talk to the assistant coaches today. You'll see on the channel, I have interviews posted with Joel Thomas, the running backs coach, with Jerome Henderson, the DBs coach, and I'm going to get into a little bit of their dissection and analysis of their position groups coming out of the preseason opener. So let's kick stuff off with Tuto Azori checking in with a $5 super chat. Tuto always setting an example. Tuto says, much love and respects to Big Boss Pat and all diehard Giants fans across the ponds. Greetings from our entire team in Italy. Please slap all stinky boys, including Saquon. So Tuto always bringing the Giants love and the loyalty and the passion for Talking Ball Live. Thank you, as always, Tuto, for being here. Joel Lopez checks in and says, can we please sit Nabers till week 1? So, Joel, I think my takeaway right now is obviously we have to take it with a grain of salt of where Nabers stands physically. We have to take it at face value that the initial belief is that it's an ankle sprain. Of course, the fact that he's rubbing the top of his foot on the side, initially my first thought was not just a standard ankle sprain, because that's a different area of the foot that he was looking at and touching. So I'm interested to see what follow-up tests turn out. Obviously, we hope doesn't turn up anything more severe, but I am curious about the severity, if there's anything else impacted in the foot, the top of the foot, there's bones there. Really, I agree with you, Joel, that I think that, listen, you never want to put people in bubble wrap at this time of year, especially rookies who can benefit from getting extra time, extra snaps. The disappointing part, of course, is that Daniel Jones and the starters are projected and expected, as Brian Dable said, to play in Houston this week in the second preseason game on the road. And so this would appear to keep Nabers out of that opportunity. And then, of course, you have to think that if you're Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and the Giants, you have a lot of collaborative conversations now occurring in the building on how to handle this. You have to believe that while they want him to be physically prepared and keep his body strong and ready for the games that count, you also don't want to risk anything additional. You certainly don't want to put him on the field before he's 100%. Also, you have the benefit as the Giants of already having seen what Malik Nabers has been able to do so far on the field. It's a small sample size. It's not real games, but you saw him go up against the Detroit Lions, and he said he felt like he learned that he can play at this level. Like it was confirmation of that. Mike Groh, the receivers coach, talking about today that they haven't spoon-fed him from a playbook standpoint, that he's accepted it and handled it well. Even I think it was, I want to say it was Brian Daboll, or somebody said recently that they were giving, might have been Joe Schoen on the broadcast. Somebody said that they were giving Nabers a lot more and putting a lot more on his plate than they typically would a rookie, and that he was handling it even better than they expected. That might have been Schoen during the broadcast. So in other words, there's a lot of good information right now that the Giants have on what Nabers is and can be for them. So it's not like they need to get a guy back on the field for a fact-finding mission, the way that, for example, Evan Neal needs to eventually get back on the field to help them. Welvin says, hope all is well, Pat. Does it look like Malik Nabers, Leak, as they call him, has a bruised foot from someone stepping on it or a sprain? Initially, Welvin, my thought was that he must have been stepped on the way he was looking at himself. But then to be honest, I was alarmed at first at how poorly he was moving when he stood up and how gingerly he was stepping on the foot. Obviously, he did make his way onto to an interview afterwards. Of course, did not talk to us, but he was not moving well. And so I would say my initial takeaway was probably got stepped on, but then watching him, how he was moving, watching how they were looking at him, watching what he was doing, to get off of the foot. I think, it showed me that it was more serious than that. And of course, the sprain is more serious than obviously just a small bruise and being stepped on, like as most soccer players would say, doesn't feel good in the moment, but then you get better, it heals. So hopefully it doesn't escalate any more than that. D Kit, great to see you. Also one of our most loyal followers and participants here on Talkin' Ball Live. Thank you for being here. Candyman says, thanks, Pat. Always appreciate the random updates. You got it, Candyman. And I know people have said this today. I know Joey B Comedy has led the charge, frequently saying that Joe feels like if I did these daily, if we went Talkin' Ball Live daily, that there would be an appetite for that with the fan base. And so daily is difficult to do, obviously, but I want to do as many of these, not only as I can, but as are necessary. And so I had no plans going into this day to do a Talkin' Ball Live. In fact, I'll be honest, my family was going to a beautiful day at Yankee Stadium. The weather's nice. It was, a lot of families going to be there. It'd be a mini family reunion of sorts. And there was a part of me waking up, even going to bed on Saturday night, saying, one day off wouldn't hurt. Go enjoy the family, right? You can get back to practice Monday. But I view it as a responsibility. It's my job and it's a responsibility to be there. You just never know what day it's going to happen. And so I did not expect, and nobody expected, there to be as many developments and twists and turns as we saw in this practice. And like I said, there's more to get to with Locke, with Neal, with some of the position coach updates on the players, with what I saw on the practice field, depth chart wise. So we're going to get into all of that. But it is a random update because I wasn't even planning on, there's a part of me saying, take the day off from practice and clear your head before you come back for another week. And then you end up going to practice and then so much happens, it becomes difficult to even just provide you with a written update, to be honest. Like, I think this is something that needs to be clarified and presented to you guys immediately. And so that's why we're here. Thank you for being here. And the super chats are flooding in. Joel Lopez says, so $5 from Joel. Thank you so much, Joel. He says, what did Evan Neal do since he was finally removed from the PUP list? Also, any John Michael Schmidt sighting? Lastly, Stephon Gilmore is visiting the Vikings today. Yeah, so let's go backwards on that because I have the most to say on Neal, but I don't want to forget the other two. Yes, Stephon Gilmore visiting the Vikings. Of course, that would be interesting. A guy at a position where the Giants really need some help, possibly joining, and you have to think ending up starting for the team that the Giants will face in week 1. So that's something to continue to monitor if he ends up signing there. I also noticed that the Niners had a corner injury. That's something I'm going to keep my eye on as well. That's a team, of course, that's a Super Bowl contender, one of the primary Super Bowl contenders, top 2, 3, some people's favorite probably to win. So that's something to watch, though. Of course, him going to Minnesota, Gilmore, marries the way I view it's opportunity. It's also probably a team that he thinks might end up paying him something that would be worth his waiting and then joining this deep into camp. But I'm keeping my eye on the Niners there as well, just because of what's going on there. JMS, yes, back at practice, but individuals limited. Though we did see on the practice field today, so they started with Andrew Thomas, left tackle, left guard John Runyon Jr., center Greg Van Roten, right guard Aaron Stinney, and then right tackle Jermaine Illuminor. However, we saw also them move to having Schlottman at center and Greg Van Roten as the right guard with Stinney out. And I view that, even though JMS did not practice, he did individuals. That to me, like I said in the preseason game, is greasing the skids and practicing the other 4 in the spots that they will end up in come week 1. I do believe the plan is for JMS, John Michael Schmitz, to come back into center, and then it'll be Thomas, Runyon, Schmitz, Van Roten, and then Illuminor at right tackle. And then the hope is Evan Neal is healthy and available to help you as a reserve. And then you also have Aaron Stinney as a backup helping you in that group as well. JMS was stepping in at times into the walkthrough portion and showing the line that I just told you about. So there was a time when he stepped into the walkthrough and that starting 5 that I projected there for you was there on the field, but he did not actually practice yet. He has the shoulder. So we'll see how much longer that goes. I was not there when he said it, but apparently Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach, said that he believes John Michael Schmitz will be ready for week 1. So that's obviously encouraging. But again, injury updates take with a grain of salt. Evan Neal, to answer that question, Joel, he did individuals as well, did not participate in team drills 11 on 11. There was actually a period even he did a little individual, and then he ended up getting extra tape from Ronnie Barnes, the head athletic trainer, and sitting down on the ground and getting extra tape on that left ankle before getting back up and participating. So that kind of showed me that he still needs significant support there, which is I was a little, worried is not the word, but it just looked like a situation where he went out there and then he realized he needed even more support. So that's just something to keep an eye on. That's just an observation. Evan Neal did strike the right chords on the podium. He did talk to us for the first time in a long time. He said that he is not owed anything on this team or on this depth chart. He said if they want him to start, if they want him to be a backup, if they want him to be a tackle, if they want him to be a guard, he's ready to help in any way. He said, I recognize this is a big season for me. He was told about how Joe Shane said he needs to play better flat out. And he said, well, that's his opinion and that's his job. And he's an evaluator. And eventually, he basically circled around and said, I do need to play better. And so, I think Evan hit on all the right notes. As I told you guys last week, they did not intend for him to come off the PUP list until he was healthy enough to put his best foot forward in order to get on the field and play his best ball, because this is such a pivotal time to evaluate him and decide, is it going to happen or is it not? So now we see how he ramps up and how he factors in. I think very clearly, guys, the backup tackle spot, as we talked about, even going into the draft, is a concern, is a problem. There were times today where they flipped Joshua Miles and Josh Azudu, moving Azudu to right tackle and Miles to left. And then there were times they had them in those same spots, Azudu on the left, Miles on the right, with the second team offense and the line. But Azudu, even though there were some good snaps he had, I don't think you can safely play him at tackle right now. We had obviously the Jones injury last year, but now the Locke injury this year. I just think you're playing with disaster there, and I like Josh a lot and I hope he turns it around, but I think that's just the harsh reality of where their depth is. So can Evan Neal help them in that department? Can he help them as a guard? I think at this point they continue to say he's going to be a tackle. We'll see where that goes. D Kit checks in with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, D Kit. He says, I think the rotations in Houston will go a long way to providing more clarity on this position battle, on these position battles. With Evan Neal, how do you think they will handle his position on the depth chart? D Kit, I don't know if he can be the swing tackle, but I think at this point, that's the best. If you could say, if he's not starting, what's the best way for Evan Neal to help the Giants? I would say at the moment, after they signed Van Roten, right? They have Runyon Jr., Van Roten there. At the moment, it's as a swing tackle in the event that Andrew Thomas or Jermaine Illuminor, gets hurt, knock on wood, or is not available or needs a spell, whatever the case may be. Now, I don't know if Evan will be able to get healthy and then also function at a high level as a swing tackle. I don't know that yet. I don't think the Giants know that yet. So I do think that would be the optimal way. I have said before, and I do believe that I'm interested in seeing Evan play the left side of the line. I don't know if he's going to have that luxury, but left guard, left tackle, like I'm interested in seeing if he can help them better there than at right tackle, because he did play a season each at left tackle, left guard, and right tackle in college at Alabama. So 2 out of the 3 of those seasons, though, were on the left. And, I know, listen, Andrew Thomas had two disappointing years coming out of the gate overall as a first and second year player with the Giants. He gets his ankle cleaned up finally, and he ends up turning it on. So it's possible Evan Neal, healthier, could suddenly put better tape out there at right tackle and be the guy there. But I've talked to enough people where I just feel like seeing Neal on the left side might give him the best chance to succeed. But right now, the best way for him to help them, because clearly he's not in the plans at the moment to be a starter, and that's, of course, impacted by health, but also by the fact, again, they need to hit the ground running. They have veterans in the building now and in that room. So you want to feel like you can rely on that front five as much as you can. No more trials here, right? That it's not going to fly for the Giants. But I think swing tackle and or left side of the line, tackle, guard. I mean, if he can be a guy who can spell you anywhere but center, that's a huge deal. Of course, that's not why you drafted him at number 7 overall, Joe Shane, a couple of years ago. But at this point, anything you get out of him would be a bonus from what you're getting now. D-Kid, thank you so much for the support. Peter Randazzo with $5 super chat says, how much do you expect Daniel Jones to play this coming week? Peter, I personally would expect about a quarter, which usually translates to 2 series. Maybe 2 series and or a quarter, depending on the length of those series. And, I think this typically is more of a snap and play count than anything. So in other words, Dable might go into a game like this saying, I want to see Daniel and the offense run these 5 concepts, a little bit of pass, a little bit of run, whatever it is. And so if they go 3 and out on the first drive, let's say he has 5 or 6 concepts he wants to see. Now it's going to be, okay, let's do another series. Let's bring it back out. Let's get those things run. Let's also see if we can get a good taste on our mouths before we take the starters out, that kind of thing. But if Daniel Jones and the offense come out and they march down the field for a 10-play, 70-yard touchdown drive that culminates with a touchdown pass to Darius Slayton or whatever, then they're not playing a second drive, right? Like that's how I view it. I believe that's kind of how they handled it in the past from what I was looking at the other day, just reminding myself and, of how Dable and Shane have handled it. And I think in large part too, it's not always like set in stone, oh, they're going to play a half or they're going to play a quarter. It's more how much they want to see out of them. And then obviously, it is important for Daniel Jones just to feel the game action physically, especially coming off the knee. So my answer at the moment would be either 2 series or a quarter, probably in that range, is more what I'm expecting. And we'll get more into what their quarterback depth chart looks like there. JC NYC checks in with $2 super chat. Thank you, JC. He says an ankle sprain swells to the front as well. Relax. Yes, no, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different types of ankle sprains, JC, no doubt about it. Believe me, I'm a basketball player, and I've sprained and broken both my ankles many times. So you don't have to tell me, no doubt. And, I think all I was trying to paint for everybody there, JC, was I'm not trying to set off a 5-alarm fire and tell you something it's not. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just telling you, as I'm standing there right after the injury happened and he takes his shoe off, the area of his foot he was touching and rubbing and looking at looked like the top of his foot, and not like right up against his ankle. That was all I was saying that I was observing. But of course, you're right. Like, it could be an ankle sprain where that side of the foot around the ankle started swelling immediately. And so it was swelling out further than, you would even expect. Now, if that's the case, then maybe it's not minor, right? But you're absolutely right. I'm just trying to tell you guys what I saw. Cause I mean, let's be honest, like, there's accounts out there reporting things that happened at practice today from people who were not at Giants practice. Like, they were not there. They don't know what happened. They didn't see it. Right. I'm not going to get on my soapbox here, but like, I wouldn't sit here and tell you guys right now about what happened at the Yankee game today, because I'm not there. I don't know. I could tell you about the highlights, but I wasn't there. I'm not telling you what I see happening in the dugout because I heard it from somebody hearsay secondhand off of a Twitter account with a, like, I'm not doing that. Anyway, not going there, but that stuff's annoying. We do our own work here. All right, let's see. Guys, thank you for all the super chats there. I really appreciate all your support. Who do we have just check in there? Tuto, Joel, D-Kit, Peter, JC. Love it. Thank you so much. And if I don't get questions, just remind me later. We got to talk about Locke. We got to talk about the quarterback depth chart, what they're doing there. And I got to give you more updates from practice, but I want to get into the questions. So a lot of them will probably come as the questions keep coming. But if I don't, just remind me of some of those things. Let's see. Oh, G-Man. He said, "What's up, Pat? We heard Daboll say Jones is playing this week versus the Texans. Do you anticipate JMS and Neal playing this week as well?" I do not anticipate them playing in the game. No, JMS and Neal, I do not. D-Kid says, "Nabers is fine, Pat. He's fine. He's fine. He's fine." Right. Yeah. Keep telling yourself, because hopefully it's true. No doubt. D-Kid says, "Matt Parrott playing left tackle for Denver and looks pretty good." That's interesting. Wow. Yeah. Really never put it together here. Injury wise, play wise, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, though. So best to Matt. And I did not realize that, D-Kid, actually. That's interesting. Michael says, "Pat, what part of Northeast Philadelphia are you from?" I'm from Northeast Philly myself, but go Giants. I'm from Fox Chase, Michael. Grew up at Cotman and Central across from Burholm Park. So right next to Cheltenham. And, that's where I spent my entire childhood up through high school before going to the University of Notre Dame. So played for NEO across the street, soccer, baseball, played for Fox Chase and Fox Rock, went to St. Cecilia's. So, and then on to Holy Ghost Prep in Ben Salem, and on to the University of Notre Dame. So that's the quick origin story. Where are you from, Michael? In the Northeast. Big Dash says, "D-Kid, if Parrott ends up being decent for the Broncos, I'll go crazy." Oh, no doubt. Yeah. If Matt Parrott turns it around and becomes a really solid starting offensive lineman, that'll drive you mad. D-Kid says, "I hope it isn't a Liz Frank for Nabers." D-Kid also says, "Bo Nix looked unbelievable today. I love to check the highlights there. Looking forward to that, D-Kid. Thanks for mentioning that." A lot of the rookie quarterbacks look good in their debuts. Interesting difference was Drake May, the guy who the Giants were targeting at number 3. Only 7 snaps there in New England. My understanding there is, yes, he's a young guy who they're developing. And clearly, even if the Giants were going to draft him, that was a quarterback who always was going to be more of a developmental takeover mid-season or next season guy, rather than more ready, like a Michael Penix Jr., for example. But also the New England offensive line is not exactly in great shape up there. So, they don't want to just throw Drake May into a real game behind a bad offensive line and get the kid killed either, and you have his confidence shattered. So that's what there was there to that. But, man, I watched some Caleb Williams the other day. He looked really good. I loved how he was kind of keeping the ball inside, protecting it. He wasn't flying around as he was moving. He wasn't panicking in the pocket, trying to escape before he had to. Making plays on the run downfield. Loved it. Jaden Daniels made some plays. JJ McCarthy obviously lighting it up against the Raiders. Now Bo Nix. So Of course, the Giants could still put it together with Daniel Jones here because they get the receiver, Malik Nabers, but hopefully he's healthy. But it's just interesting. You guys know this obviously from when like Jones comes in and replaces Eli and has that big game. The young new quarterback it makes everything more exciting. They're making plays and it makes you excited about the present and the future. It's kind of the best sweet spot to be in, even though obviously a lot of them end up falling flat. Let's see. Big Dash says, yes, Bo Nix did, especially in that 2-minute drive at the end of the first half. Coaching matters here as well. So JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, offensive coaches, coaching does matter for sure. Health and wealth to all, says Tommy. No doubt, Tommy. Thanks for saying that. Thanks for being here, Tommy. Always like having you and everybody. D-Kid says, Pat, early returns are that the young QBs did well and up and down the board. I believe this regime needs Jones Nabers to take a serious step forward this season, especially if the young quarterbacks hit. Especially if JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., like, let's just face it, as much as we could say Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, the Giants couldn't get up to any of those players. So, it's really, you can't sit there and blame them for not having those quarterbacks in that draft because they didn't have a chance to take them. But they did pass on those other three guys we just mentioned, right? So to your point, D-Kit, pressure on the Giants in the sense that if McCarthy and or Nix and or Penix succeeds and looks really good, not a good reflection. OG says, what's good, Pat? OG, what's up, man? Great to see you. Tommy says, Tudo, hope you and the family are well. The trenches look like our practice squad will be improved, more competitive. Our starters should have more production this season if healthy. We will see. Big Dash says, Nabers looked in good spirits in that Kay Adams interview. He did. Obviously, he was not asked about the injury. He didn't have to talk about that. He wasn't facing, questions about probably the biggest challenge he's faced so far, right? No targets in the first preseason game, injured in practice. So that looked like, sometimes in those moments, a guy is really just happy to be answering questions that aren't about the day-to-day, and they're more about just in general, his personality, his friendship with Jaden Daniels, their uniform number. Like there could be rules sometimes to interviews like that. So he can walk in with his guard down a little bit. But Big Dash, what I do agree, it is interesting that he did the interview. He didn't seem down and discouraged. So, we'll see. We'll see if he's putting on a front there and putting on a smile for the cameras, or if there's something more serious to it. He did say that he was going to set everything right in week 2 when he sees his buddy Jaden Daniels against Washington. So at that moment, obviously, he feels like he's ready to go. But you also have to be careful taking any information, any injury updates or information or insight from players, Big Dash, because some of these guys, they'll play through anything until they get told not to, even if they shouldn't or couldn't. And then some of them feel a certain way at one point, and then they get a test and it turns out it's broken, or they think nothing's wrong and then they get a test and it's sprained, or, like it's a delicate balance to take any insight from that kind of thing. So you're right that he did seem in good spirits. I think that's a good way of saying it. But it's hard to glean insight from those moments. I just know from experience, but we'll see. Obviously, hopefully it's better. So Big Dash says his biggest issue with it is developing the communication with Jones in game. He's not getting into the game. He's not playing in Houston. You have to expect. To me, I just view this as no game action till week 1 now from Malik Nabers. That's how I view this, is how I would imagine it gets handled. We don't know that for sure, but that's how I would imagine it gets handled. D-Kid says Pat, the coaching staff needs to keep this positive momentum going throughout the preseason. They must play their players and continue to maintain competition at all positions. In that vein, they are going back into pads on Monday, August 11th. So we were talking here Monday, August 12th. So we sit here on this Talking Ball Live on Sunday, August 11th. On the 12th, tomorrow, Monday, Brian Daboll is putting his team back in pads. So, a much different, more physical style of camp than they ran last year, with rest-filled days all over the place. Team wasn't ready to play the season. So good to see them practicing hard. As Chris Manhertz told me, the best way to play good football and improve your football is by practicing real football and callousing yourself to that season and to those body blows you're going to take. So, that's a good sign. And at least as of this coming Monday, August 12th, that is continuing that emphasis. Tommy says, only if Daniel Jones can be assured of a contract to play more consistently and confident instead of hesitating and second guessing his play, not wanting to make mistakes. We need him to let it rip. Yeah, as so far, what I see is a confident Daniel Jones, a guy with a chip on his shoulder. Now, I will say we were out of practice. Wasn't a great practice from an execution standpoint. Daniel did hit Nabers for a touchdown over top of Belton and Pinnock before the injury. He also hit Jalen Hyatt for a touchdown down the left sideline. But there was a Jason Pinnock interception, and there was plenty sloppiness, sloppy plays. Protection wasn't ideal either in front of Jones or DeVito. DeVito had a really difficult practice. He threw at least 3 receivers into big hits. Tyree Jackson took the hit at the goal line from the defender. The other 2 guys caught the ball, and the defenders let up because it's non-contact. But he had at least 3 throws complete to receivers that would have gotten a guy's head taken off, and had others batted down, and just a really tough day. Both quarterbacks ended up on the ground at one point too. DeVito had both of his tackles, Azudu and Miles, backed up into him and knocked down. And then Daniel Jones, wasn't clear why he hit the ground. He ended up on the ground on an incompletion. I don't think he took like a hit or anything though. I don't know if he might have like stepped on a lineman's foot as he threw. It wasn't exactly clear. But intensity is good, sloppiness not. Peter Randazzo checks in with another $5. Thank you, Peter. He says, I think Brian Daboll knows because of the schedule they need to start fast. This is why all the 11-on-11s and more practice and pads. Your opinion? Yes, Peter, absolutely. You know what's interesting to me about this? This is like Joe Judge and how they practiced under Joe Judge. Now, Judge was more intense, and the players, obviously, there were plenty of players who graded against how intense it got. But, there was a lot of pushback after Judge was fired and Gettleman was fired and all that about how they had practiced. And of course, Daboll comes in and has a more, the narrative from Daboll and the team is that it's this more player friendly approach, but it got too friendly. It was too friendly. It was hands off. And really the first year you get away with, it's like always, whatever you change from, it's a breath of fresh air from what you had. If you needed to change it and it was wearing on people, we always see that sometimes it goes from a really loose staff to a guy who's a disciplinarian and strict, and that's what's needed. And sometimes it goes the other way. And in this case, year 1, no pressure, good vibes. They get off to a 6-1 start and they get to the playoffs and it works. But last year, the loosey-goosey kind of country club nature of how they were running things and giving guys rest all over the place was obviously ineffective and very poor preparation. And, Peter, I think not only is this a big year for Daboll and the Giants, but it just wasn't effective last year. Like, I know no one wants to go back and watch that Cowboys game, but what I remember from that night was that Micah McFadden looked like he was ready and everybody else looked like they weren't. That's kind of what I remembered. Was like McFadden was basically that. Was like, oh yeah, it's week 1, ready to play. And there were a lot of guys who were like, oh wait, ball got kicked off, So it's a necessity, but Peter, you're absolutely right. And listen, it's late. Like they should have been practicing like this anyway, in my opinion, but this, when you say here are the necessary fixes the coach and the GM and the team and the franchise need to make, they deserve credit for understanding and ripping it all up and kind of ripping the Band-Aid off and saying, listen, we screwed up here. Like we had to do better. And here's how we're going to do it differently. Right. There's no doubt in my mind, by the way, that so they brought in Aaron Wellman into this process. And, I thought Craig Fitzgerald did a great job. But I think it feels to me like they're giving Aaron Wellman more of a voice than he had the last time he was in the organization, because I do think the dynamic between Shane Daboll, Ronnie Barnes in previous years, in the last couple seasons, was more of an emphasis on management. And I think Wellman's insertion into the dialogue maybe has created, it's like a balance between the management and also the intensity, is the way I see it. But, because there's more of a voice being given to that new position created, right? Because they were working those guys and working their bodies and preparing their bodies. It was just different from a standpoint of how they manage practice workloads. Thank you, Peter. Todd Banks says, did the Giants see J.J. McCarthy as another Daniel Jones? Only preseason, but J.J. looked sharp yesterday. He did look sharp. Todd, my understanding is that they liked him as more of like a late first, second round talent. So they felt like there was something to work with there and they liked things about him, but that developmentally he wasn't he wasn't at the point where he was elevated ahead of a guy who could help them right away, that he wasn't at that point is what I gathered in my reporting. So, it wasn't like they didn't think he was any good, but they didn't think he was worth that pick. So obviously you talk about, hey, we need a quarterback, but we're not interested in one. You're of course saying, this guy's in our mind early on, a backup, right? And now developmentally, maybe they viewed him as being better than that. I know there are people in the building who liked him, but they definitely didn't think that he could handle, what they were looking for if they were going to take a quarterback there. Otherwise, they would have. Nick McLeod needs to stay healthy. He is our number 2, but our defensive unit looks more complete and confident with the scheme and play calling, says Tommy. Yeah, so Tommy, thanks for mentioning that. Nick McLeod, I think it is his job to lose on the outside. Now, Cordell Flott has a quad injury. He's going to be out this week through the Texans game. I did ask Jerome Henderson if he thinks he might end up going back and working in the slot once he comes back. Jerome essentially left the door open to that. He said, well, we know that he can do that. And now if we can have him outside and slot, we know that we have him potentially available for both. I view this as McLeod Banks outside, Drew Phillips inside if everybody's healthy. That's just me. Now, Drew Phillips did not practice an 11-on-11 today. He was on the field, but he didn't do 11-on-11. They had Trey Herndon there at slot corner instead. Not exactly sure why. We'll talk more to Brian Daboll and find that out. But the rookie obviously has had a pretty good start to camp, so that's been encouraging. You want to see if he can get back on the field. We'll see. And then I was going to say that could be a workload thing for Drew Phillips, but of course you had the game and then you had, you had Friday off day, like from practice, and Saturday off day. So it was a little surprising that he wasn't doing anything in 11-on-11. So I have to admit that. Noteworthy, Tommy, though, so you guys will see this in the interview when you watch the interview that I have recorded on and posted on the YouTube channel with Jerome Henderson. But the Giants named Trey Hawkins their defensive player of the game in that preseason opening win against the Lions. And I talked to Trey a little bit about it. He's encouraged by how he played. He said, it's funny. He said like, oh, well, I gave up a hitch route, like he's focused on the things that he can get better at. So that's good perspective from the young corner there, the late round pick who's trying to put it together in year 2. But after being named defensive player of the game, Hawkins did see first team split reps with Nick McLeod at outside corner. So they had Deonte Banks on the one side today, and then they had Trey Hawkins and McLeod both taking snaps outside on the other. McLeod was the starter in the first one up, but Hawkins getting plenty of reps there. Does feel to me like McLeod's being managed here physically a little bit, but he's on the field. He's practicing. But, they're trying to give Trey Hawkins merit-based extra snaps here, and like I said this going into training camp, the Giants should play the guys who are making the plays. So you don't want to do rotations, right? You want guys to settle in, earn jobs, and give them a chance to develop and grow in them. But you have to go by merit. So the Giants, if they are running a true camp, and this goes for any NFL team too, don't play guys because of their contract. Don't play guys because you have a predetermined plan for what you want to see. Play the guys who are making the plays. So Trey Hawkins has a good game, earns more snaps. Well-deserved. All right, let's see. Next question goes to lost my place here. Brian Brown. What's up, Brian? Brian says, I think he was just feeling the sting from the step of a 200-pound man. Was hoping to see him with Daniel Jones on Saturday, but better safe than sorry. Sit him. Talking about Malik Nabers. Hopefully that's all it is. Obviously, if he has a sprained ankle, it's not just someone stepping on your foot. on the top of your foot. You would have a sprained ankle normally would be getting rolled up on, twisting it, something like that. Yes, I wish I had seen the actual play and seen it happen. I did not see it actually happen. But yes, Brian, you're absolutely right. Like, better safe than sorry is the plan, has to be the plan, in my opinion. And I think the Giants understand that. Like I said, no need to be on a fact-finding mission right now with Malik Nabers. You've figured out what he can do already. You fed a lot to him in the playbook, and you can feel excited about that. So, no rush to get him on the back of the field. That's for sure. You want him on the field for the games that count. Big Dash says, appreciate the commitment, Pat. You got it, Big Dash. And I appreciate you being on here, Big Dash. I know one of our, esteemed Giants content creators out there. People love to follow. Give Big Dash a follow as well, everybody. He does great work, and also a huge supporter of the channel. Thank you for being here. People like you who are diehards who produce great Giants content, being here helps us grow this channel as well. And I do hope everybody does understand, what's unique about what we do here is I come straight out of the practice facility and off the practice field to give you boots on the ground reporting, right? Like talking directly to these coaches, players, sources, people in the organization, and watching the practice with my own eyes. I hope I can give you guys a full explanation and context of what I'm seeing and hearing. D with a $5 super chat. Thank you, D. He says, it's clear that Brian Daboll wants to play offenses a certain way. What quarterback on the roster besides possibly Jones looks capable of that? The tight end Jackson? D, it's interesting you say that. I mean, obviously he likes mobility along with an arm. So Drew Lock has some mobility. His best looking completion the other day was a rollout to his left, throwing to Allen Robinson on the sideline. DeVito does have mobility, the ability to get out and run. Of course, not the same level of quarterback as those guys, but does have mobility. The tight end Jackson, that's a weird thing, D. So I'm glad you brought that up. So the Drew Lock plan is this. Again, another player, I would put him in the Nabers camp of, to me, it's more likely we don't see him again until the regular season than, during the preseason as far as games are concerned. Better safe than sorry. Also, obviously, diagnosed injuries that need to heal with Drew Lock's case, even though the Giants are playing coy. But their plan as of now, according to Brian Daboll, is that they do not intend to sign a quarterback. They intend to work Tyree Jackson, the tight end, as a potential emergency third quarterback for this Houston Texans game. Because he has a history with that. So it would be Jones, DeVito, Tyree Jackson. Now, to me, this was just my first reaction was, I don't love that for Jackson because he's actually playing pretty well as a receiving tight end. And then you're going to have him taking some practice reps or individual reps and working as a quarterback just in case. It seems strange to me. Obviously, the more you can do, sometimes that helps guys. But, I think the most likely name out of everybody, and this is not, I don't know if they've talked to this guy right now, but like Jacob Eason is the guy who seems like he's the most recently in the Giants building, physically available, guy who maybe knows and can run this offense. Now, that said, the plan initially was for him to stay around here in the Giants building and continue to develop and grow, and then they just let him go. So I don't know exactly how much appetite there is for a reunion there, but that was just on the surface, who would be least likely to most likely. Like Matt Barkley, I know knows the system. I guess he could be the emergency call as well. Not sure whether he'd be able to handle that at this point from a physical standpoint. Jake Fromm, that ship has sailed. And Nathan Rourke, he is a guy who, as of the other day, like he's on the Falcons. He got some playing time with the Falcons in their first preseason game on Friday. And that's an organization that had been keeping their eye on Nathan Rourke for when he was available a couple times. Wasn't able to land him the first time on waivers and then landed him this time. So that's a player that, at least for the foreseeable future, it appears he's going to be in Atlanta. Now, if the Falcons take a look at his first game tape or they have some machinations going on with their roster and they release him, maybe the Giants try to revisit that situation. So that's a name I think to keep on the periphery of your radar because he was here before they essentially handed the third job to DeVito over him rather than making it a competition. Let's see. Tommy says, can't wait to see my H-Town Texans against our Giants. Will be a good scrimmage. Texans going to the AFC Championship. Hope the Giants can make the proper adjustments all year long to find themselves on a run. Yeah, no, you do have to like that the Giants are playing three talented teams this preseason, right? Lions, Texans, Jets, different organizations, but all teams with talent. Two teams in the Texans and Lions are coming off strong seasons. The Texans, a team where the Giants want to go, like you said. Of course, the ingredient that stirred that entire drink, in addition to some good acquisitions and talent being built over the years, was them drafting CJ Stroud and the quarterback. So Daniel Jones has to be that ingredient for the Giants as a veteran. But, from a prepping for the season standpoint, hard not to welcome and like the amount of preparation the Giants are getting against this kind of high level of competition. Let's see. By the way, Dable was asked today about why he wasn't doing a joint practice with the Houston Texans. So, he was asked, was there any talk of doing joint practices with the Texans? And if so, why not? Because you're doing them with the Lions and Jets. He said, we've had those conversations. We do it with two teams, so not much. And then he was asked, does that factor into how much you want to play the starters, et cetera? He said, that's part of it. You have a conversation over the summer, planning for Detroit and the amount of reps and workload we put in on the ones. So there's definitely an element to that. Practice against them, maybe pull back and you don't practice, maybe you play more. Again, that will be dictated on how those next three practices go. We'll put a lot on them, these three practices, a lot of plays, 2 padded practices, and then we'll evaluate at the end of the week. So 2 padded practices coming this week after Sunday in Shells. Tommy also says Beavers, Ovi, Deontay Johnson, Alex Johnson, Muasau, Owens, Riley, Chapman. If any starter goes down, we definitely have a chance with them in rotation, but Locke isn't a backup. Tommy should have that job. I did ask Brian Dable about whether DeVito had a chance to challenge Drew Lock for the number 2 job on game day in the regular season. He said, I would say with Tommy and with Drew, all we're going to ask them to do is go out there and play as good as they can play and produce. And all those decisions will be made at the end of camp based on who we think gives us the best chance at each position. Whether it's backup quarterback, 3 technique, starting receiver, those are all yet to be determined, besides Dexter, AT, and a few of the other guys, Burns, Thibodeau, Bobby, etc. So, left the door open a squeak there, Tommy. Left the door open a squeak. No Mets, what's up? He says, Pat, let's use Evan Neal for depth. Good results are good results. Thanks for being here, No Mets, another loyal follower and listener and viewer. Iconic, what's up? He says, what's up, Pat? Will you be in Houston? Do you think this is the only preseason game that the first team will play more? I will be in Houston, in Friday, out Saturday night after the game. So not even staying the 2 nights in and out from Texas. Looking forward to my time there, though. Excited to be down there. Again, I value being there, and I hope that I can bring you guys additional insight that you couldn't otherwise receive by being there on the ground at the stadium. That always helps me, seeing the football live and also talking to people in person. Yes, I think my hunch is that this is the only game we'll see the full starting group play, but wouldn't shock me based on how they handled the first preseason game if we see starters here and there, depending on, how much of those competitions are ramped up or still not resolved by that point, playing at different spots. So, I wouldn't blanket statement say the starters aren't playing against the Jets, but I would say that the full starting group, if you're wanting to see them, I think the Houston game is where you're going to see that. Because remember, they do have the joint practice against the Jets the following week. Vinny G-Man, what's up? He says, great coverage and real content, Pat, new subscriber. Vinny, thanks so much for saying that. Thanks for reminding everybody. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, please. You will get notifications from YouTube, or you can turn them on if they're not on, but they should come in automatically once you first subscribe. So when I go live or I post new content, which is YouTube Shorts with news, breakdowns, recaps of practices, quick updates, teases to what's coming next, and then different series that we're unpacking, even player and executive and coach interviews. Like, for example, today we talked to the assistant coaches, and the Giants do a good job of, they have a camera on all of their assistant coaches and they record all of their interviews. But what they do is they put a compilation kind of 30-minute video on their website with their assistants talking. So what I try to do every time the assistants are available is I pick one or two who I can record the bulk of, if not their full interview, and participate in it, right? I try to pick a coach that it's somebody who's coaching a position group that I feel like there's a lot happening. There's a lot of position battling, or there are stories I'm working on, but also a lot of insight that maybe they can provide that someone else can't. And so in this sense, this week, this Sunday, August 11th, I have full interviews there with Jerome Henderson, the DB's coach, and the running backs coach, Joel Thomas. Thomas is a great conversation, a great guy to listen to. Some highlights from what Joel Thomas told me today. His quote about Eric Gray's touchdown run, he said that he made his guy look silly. I love that. And Turbo Miller, listen, Turbo Miller, in my opinion, if he just stays on the same track he's on this roster. Listen to these comments from Joel Thomas. Very productive camp, pure speed. He said he has what, not everybody has, and not most guys have, which he called the Tesla start, that he can go from 0 to 80 in an instant. He also said, even though he's a smaller guy, he doesn't play little. And then this was interesting too. He said, when it comes to coaching a running back like that, they were talking about one thing about, how to run in camp. And he said he understands his job responsibilities. And if he doesn't, I make sure he does. So that was, you got a window into Joel Thomas saying what kind of coach he is, which is, he's grooming these guys and building them up, and he's going to be stern, but in a way that's going to grow them and develop them. And I really like that. I thought you saw a window into, like, we're not tolerating mistakes here. I can show you the right way. Let's do it so it doesn't happen again. Like, I like that. I like seeing that intensity. And then on Tyrone Tracy, I asked him, I said to Joel Thomas, frankly, I said, Joel, I said, to be honest, when I walked into camp, I felt like you probably needed a bigger back for short yardage situations, interior runs. But I said, when I see Tyrone Tracy Jr., he's pretty big. Like, he's kind of physically built, bigger than you would expect. I said, do you agree that he can handle those types of inside runs? And Joel Thomas said, I would go down that road with you. Like, in other words, he's not anointing him. And like he said, I'm not handing him our short yardage job today, but he agreed with me. Physically built. He said that he's built a little bit different than the rest of the room, which is what I see as well. He also acknowledged, this was great. He said that Tyrone Tracy showed some bludgeony runs versus the Lions. So, if that doesn't get you excited about NFL football and Giants football, I don't know what does. That your 5th round running back rookie pick, that his position coach is smiling and saying that he had some bludgeony runs. Bludgeony. We got to put that hashtag on a t-shirt. By the way, just so you know, got a new Talkin' Ball logo done. Going to be creating that merch that I promised. I think you guys are going to love it. And going to be creating some of those shirts and some swag. So, if once I get that Shopify store up, we might have to do hashtag bludgeony with a Tyrone Tracy face. What do you say? While I'm here, so I see that Peter Randazzo has checked in with a super chat. Peter, I'm going to get to that real quick. Just want to remind everybody about our sponsors. First, Boom Chaga. So we are sponsored here on Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or you access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. So go to boomchaga.com. That's the subscribe and save order. Type in the Talkin Ball 25 code you see on the screen or use the QR code above, and you will get a discount. And then you can cancel out the subscription. You don't have to stay subscribed. It won't lock you in, but that's the way to get the discount. Subscribe and save with the code. Here's the product right here over my shoulder. I promise you guys, you will love it. D-Kit already tried it and endorsed it and says it's good. And then we're also sponsored by Bet Online and by Estate 98 Coffee. It takes you 10 seconds to make an iced coffee. Natural specialty coffee with no sugar, convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. So that's getting you, I think the exact number is, I think they estimate there's 16 cups of coffee in every jar, something like that. So basically you're talking about getting more than a month's supply of coffee for the price of a week and a half or 2 weeks worth of coffee. I think you'll love it. Also works as a mixer, mixed drinks. If you're making an espresso martini, it's great for that as well. All right. Peter Randazzo is here. $10 super chat again. Peter, thank you so much, man. Really supporting us today and always. He says on X or Twitter, Cowboys fans, we hope Dak plays to his runner-up MVP season. Eagles fans, we hope Hurts plays to his runner-up MVP season. Giants fans, we hope Daniel Jones keeps the beard. That's a really good point. That's funny. I think that there's a section of the fan base, and I think, Peter, that's you have a good sense of humor about it, and you're embracing, though, the reality, which is this. So Giants fans, I think a lot of Giants fans, especially those of us in this community here who are talking about this team all the time, I think you guys, you're loyal and you love your team. You also understand how bad it's gotten for so long here as far as how much losing has happened, how unacceptable that is because of the standard that's been set here, because of the 4 Super Bowls, because of the history of this organization. This is the 100th season, trying to put your best foot forward. So you're able to laugh at the disappointment that has now graded on you to the point where the standard, it's not lowered for what your team needs to do in the organization, but you're just at a point where, it hurts when you're too invested into a process, into a team, and to something that is not going to return the favor. And so you still love them, but you're pushing for some positives and trying to take whatever you can get, but also embracing the reality that you're not where some of these teams are. Now, the flip side of what you just said, Peter, is yes, those are guys that came off MVP level seasons the last years, quarterbacking other teams in the division. And now also Jaden Daniels is an encouraging looking rookie in Washington. But there are questions about all these teams. Now, the Giants record, I believe is it 1-8 against the Eagles and Cowboys the last 2 years, I think, under Daboll and Shane. Those numbers speak for themselves. A lot of those games, most of those games, not close. But the Cowboys, a lot of scrutiny there. They're not investing much in this year's team with a coach on the hot seat. What's that about? The Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni with Daboll-like issues as far as how does he conduct himself, his temper, managing the team. Obviously, friction with the quarterback that is now public that we've been telling you about throughout the offseason. A lot of an staff evolution there, hot seat, Daboll hot seat. So those are teams that are more talented and in a better place seemingly than the Giants. But also there are questions about those teams as well. No doubt about it. But Peter, you have a good sense of humor, and that's a good contribution to the chat. I appreciate you. All right, let's get back into the queue here. No Mets has also had a lot of ankle injuries. Shout out to Matt Parrott. Parrott would have never been a left tackle here and maybe had a horrible offensive line coaching. Also, if you remember last year, he was the backup to Andrew Thomas, and he came in and immediately got hurt. And then that ended up with Josh Azudu as the next option behind Parrott. And then we all know how that went. Josh, of course, was thrown into a blender of a guard rotation and then asked to be the left tackle for Daniel Jones. Candyman says, a little upset we didn't sign Connor Williams. Do you know if we even tried? I do not know, Candyman. To my knowledge, no. But of course, we know that the Giants have been on the offensive line circuit because they have added, since the spring, Runyon Jr. They've added Jermaine Illuminor. They added Aaron Stinney. They added Austin Schlottman. There was Jimmy Morrissey from the end of last season on a futures deal. And then you have Greg Van Roten now signed. So definitely a focus there, even though, of course, still shaking my head they didn't draft one. Let's see. A2Z Me says, still find it a little hard to believe that we are here in year 6 and we're running this all over again, pretending we have a chance at winning something. Go Blue. I'm just, you know what, A2Z Me, I've been on the record as saying, that I don't have high expectations for the season. That said, though, at the moment, I think the best way to present everything to you guys is to now, I have no problem giving you my opinion on anything, but on a day like today, for example, just telling you face value, what I'm seeing on the practice field, what looks good, what doesn't, and kind of giving you the facts so that you can internalize them and kind of put them into your understanding of the team's trajectory and process. But let's be fair. You got to judge it on wins and losses. That's what you got to judge it on. And on how you keep players healthy or not. That's been a problem here as well. Let's see. All right. Todd says, hi, Pat. You mentioned when comparing the Bears and Giants rebuild that the Giants' unexpected success in year 1 precluded a second-year teardown. The Bears could have kept Mack, Quinn, Roquan et al. Todd, yeah, let me read that again, how you phrased it. I mentioned when comparing them that the Giants' unexpected success in year 1 precluded a second-year teardown. So, no, the Giants didn't have a second-year teardown. They actually, unexpected success led them to believe they could add pieces and win in year 2. And so, like Darren Waller being acquired, like a 30-year-old tight end being acquired in year 2, like that's not a tear down move, right? Now, obviously, once they started losing and they trade a guy like Leonard Williams, then it looks like a tear down. But the design going into year 2 was not a tear down. But Todd, I think, the point you're bringing up, and you say like the Bears could have kept Mack, Quinn, Roquan et al. Is, what you're hitting on is that the teams in the same space and in the same part of the process of hiring a new GM, new coach, you're talking about there 2 teams that evaluated their roster and proceeded differently in how they operated and what they did with the roster. Now, the Bears have not been perfect, right? They've had draft picks that have missed. The Chase Claypool trade was a disaster, but Poles' trade with Carolina obviously could end up being one of the best trades and biggest fleecings in NFL history. And so, I think you could make an argument that from the Giants end, if they didn't have that first year success, it would have been easier for them to continue a tear down and make it a tear down and call it a real long-term process rather than having that early success and then feeling like, oh, year 2, here we go. And then falling on your face and then creating a revisionist history that it was always going to be this long-term, no success until 2026 type attitude, which is not, obviously the reality either. But you make a very good point. It comes down to how you evaluate your team and kind of making those tough decisions. Now, Joe Schoen has made tough decisions and tried to make tough decisions. And, it hasn't always gone smoothly, though. I'd argue it hasn't gone smoothly often. Sterling Shepard pay cut, Darius Slayton pay cut, Saquon Barkley negotiations, Nick Gates situation, et cetera. So it hasn't been easy and it gets messy at times. So you hope that the results start to show that it was worth it, is what you're looking for. Todd says, however, they chose to immediately tear down the roster and eat a lot of dead money. If Schoen had a true vision and plan, he could have done the same thing. Well said, well completed there on that thought, Todd. Dave says, Giants O-line has been terrible since they got rid of Pat Flaherty as coach. I hope Carmen Brasillo can channel some of his experience with Dante Scarnecchia and bring respectability back to the group. Agree, Dave, but I also think that I think it's time to, like in New York, I think it's like a tradition around here for position coaches and coaches in general to take the blame for mistakes that are often either partially their fault and partially above their head or totally over their head. Like, for example, Evan Neal, Josh Azudu, Marcus McKeithen. It's possible that with better coaching, some of those guys will develop into better players. it's also possible that none of those players turn out to be good enough, or that 2 out of 3 aren't good enough regardless of a coach. So I do think you have to keep those things in context. Like, this is the 8th offensive line coach in 10 years. Now, to your point, Flaherty was a very good coach for the Giants and obviously helped them keep a lot together and protect their best assets, right? Eli Manning staying healthy. He was durable, but also had a tough O-line. So, I guess it all goes into the pot of accountability and blame, I think, is my point, Dave. So I'm saying, yes, of course, the hope is that Brasillo helps to turn this around and get things fixed. But what I guess my point is, if the O-line comes out and it's not good enough, this can't be a Carmen Brasillo is a bad O-line coach conversation, because obviously the thread that ties everything together is not the new O-line coach if the O-line stays bad, is my point. All right. For Show KB says, after the rule of 51, are the Giants almost $30 million in cap space? So let's check the Giants cap space at the moment. Their cap space at the moment is $9 million. That is where the Giants sit at the moment, according to Over the Cap. It's actually just under $10 million is where they sit right now. When the dust settles after cut down day and some moves they make and potential restructures, they can clear some more there, but that's where they stand as of this moment. Why haven't the Giants drafted a quarterback since Daniel Jones? Well, he had some injury seasons there. Obviously, the 2022 year and giving them that contract changed things that year. And then also, if you remember, obviously, I think it was the year after Daniel was drafted, but the year after he was drafted, they take, I want to make sure I'm right here, but, like Justin Herbert was a guy that year that they liked in the draft. Now, most teams don't do the, draft a quarterback the year after you draft one, or draft a quarterback 2 years after you draft one. It happens. Most teams don't do that, but, great example is, fact of the matter is they draft Daniel Jones in 2019, and then in 2020, they have the 4th overall pick. They draft Andrew Thomas, who obviously has become a franchise left tackle. And then the next 2 picks are Tua and Justin Herbert. So they like Justin Herbert in that draft, but they had drafted Daniel the year before, so they don't take a quarterback. So that's how you end up, let's say, not taking Justin Herbert, even though you're in position to take him. And I remember at the time I wrote a column saying, I don't care if you just drafted a quarterback last year. If you think Herbert's a better player than Daniel is, you got to take him. But, Andrew Thomas is a building block. He's a good player. So it's not like they missed on the pick on the player. But I think that's an interesting conversation too, because easier said than done, right? Like if you're the GM, that's a hard thing to do. But also, I just think it's the most important position. Like you got to get it right. And then obviously, Danny, just fact of the matter, what we know to be true is this year they tried to get a guy to replace him, get a successor. They tried to trade up to draft a quarterback, Drake May. They had Jaden Daniels in their sights if it was a possibility, but it wasn't a possibility. And then obviously Russell Wilson visited them. For some reason, they thought Tyrod Taylor was going to possibly come back. They made an offer to him. He went to the Jets, predictably leaving after what happened last year. And they end up with Drew Lock, who then takes all the first team reps in the spring and is arriving knowing that he has a chance to compete for a job. But Daniel Jones gets healthy going into training camp. And even though he hasn't played perfectly, has staved him off, and Locke has not pushed him and is now hurt. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version there. Tuto says, Pat, screwball on the rocks, mate. Well said, Tuto. Screwball, if you're listening, I don't know why you don't sponsor us yet. We got Boom Chaga on board. We have Estate 98 on board. We have Bet Online on board. Screwball, you got to be next. Let's go. And I think even a lot of the listeners here either like Screwball or are interested by Screwball. All right, let's get to the next chat here. For Show KB says, is it me or has Azeez Ojulari looked slower and wasn't a factor against the second, third team Lions? Yeah, Azeez didn't make a ton of plays in that game. Wasn't noticeable as much as you would have expected for sure. He did have some plays in practice today, had a batted pass on Tommy DeVito. I mentioned in our conversation last time that my eyebrows raised when I saw that Seth Walder, my colleague who's not at ESPN, he created like 5 hypothetical trades that could happen coming out of camp. And he had Aziz being a guy that the Giants could maybe offload and get a late round pick for. I don't know if they intend to do that, but I think that speaks to kind of where the conversation is about a player like that right now. A person they like, a player they like, a guy who can help their pass rush, but also injury prone, injury history. If you don't get something for him now, you maybe never get something for him if someone else views him as an asset. So something to watch there. But of course, you never want to get rid of guys who can get the quarterback either. So, and Boogie Basham has had a pretty good camp, but can he be your next man up edge, right? Do you have those guys at edge where you feel comfortable with that? No Met says, how can we not carry 4 running backs, Pat? No Mets. It's interesting. The top 3 were clearly, in my mind, Singletary, Tracy, and Singletary, Tracy, and Turbo Miller. But then Eric Gray makes a couple plays that pop, 24-yard catch, 48-yard touchdown run in that game against the Lions. He's showing some toughness, and obviously he's a draft pick. So at the moment, there's 4 guys who have all earned a spot as of here and now. I don't know if that's going to be something that holds, but I'm just sitting here telling you right now, like Turbo Miller is a guy who before camp, I just didn't think that was a player who was going to be a factor, but now I think he will be. And listening to Joel Thomas today, I think they love the guy. For Show KB says, what's the roster number ideally for each position? Ooh, that's an interesting question. I was looking at this the other day. It's, just ballpark, like 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 tight ends, and maybe like a 4th in one of those rooms, 6 wide receivers or 7, depending. Offensive line is typically, no more than 8, because you end up with the starting 5, a backup interior lineman, a backup tackle. So it could be 7 or 8. So sometimes it's 8 guys on the roster and then 1 guy who's going to end up being a scratch more often than not. And then on defense, you typically have, 4 to 5 interior defensive linemen, 4 edge rushers normally, or 5. You could go either way on interior edge, depending if you have some flex there. And then at corner, usually it's 4 or 5, and then safety would typically be 3 or 4, depending on how you're moving with those secondary numbers and what versatility you have with those guys, plus special teamers. And obviously, like we've talked about, guys like Miles Boykin, who's an excellent gunner, Gunnar Olszewski, who's a receiver, but mainly a returner and a specialist there. Those guys factor in along with the kickers, punters, and snappers. D Kit says, Pat, does the coaching staff let these players know real time where they stand roster wise? At times, I mean, it's, I think the players understand it from a standpoint of it'd be the kind of thing, D, like if, let's say you're a player, let's say you're Trey Hawkins and you're not playing a lot with the ones, and then you play a strong game, you get named defensive player of the game in a preseason game, and then you get first team reps the next practice. Now you're being coached on what you did well and what you did wrong and what you can improve still, just like any game, but you're seeing the signs and you're getting the message from the coaching staff of you've earned more. We're giving you more. Here's how we feel. Keep taking advantage of it. Versus you could be a guy who, like Theo Johnson today, had a difficult practice, had at least 2 drops, maybe 3 he could have caught that hit the ground. Had a tough practice, rookie tight end who's had a good camp so far. And that would be the kind of thing where he's projecting like he could be tight end 1, but if he's having a practice like that and you take him aside and then the tight end room, you're doing a lot of correction work and you're explaining that, it's not going to be a conversation after one day. Like, Theo, if you don't keep making plays, you're not going to play for us, right? It's not going to be that direct day in and day out, but it's going to be maybe, okay, now we're really going to lean harder into this Bellinger Manhurts 1-2 punch now because Theo's struggling a little bit, and then see if he can earn his way back or whatever, just examples of how it can happen where it's not always like an overt, hey, you're on the team as of today. Right. But there are conversations like that happen as well. And I think sometimes like the players, you talk to veterans like Slayton and some other guys, some of them they'll tell you that when they're younger, their minds live in that world a lot of, am I on the team? Am I not on the team? Who's going to make the team? What did I do wrong? Does one day affect me either way? And, the veterans often say that the best thing is to take a deep breath and recognize you just have to keep playing well every day, be consistent, put your head down and let chips fall where they may, because there are factors outside of your control, like what I was just asked about before, which is, the numbers at different positions. Like sometimes it is a numbers game, but obviously, ultimately as a player, you just want to make them have to keep you and force the decision on them. Tommy says, Pat, with a better roster, our D-line should have more juice going into a run. We seem to have some players that will keep a strong rotation with not much fall off, but Azeez looks terrible. Well, we'll see where Azeez is. I mean, he was dealing with something in the spring again. He wasn't on the field in the spring at practice. So that was odd and weird and not something you want to see from a guy who has an injury history. So that's for sure. Martin says, hey, Pat, is Ronnie Barnes now just too old to be involved with the Giants anymore? I don't view age as, I remember when I worked at Temple University and I was like 22 years old doing academic support for student athletes, working with a lot of athletes, and they have to manage their time. They have to get to class. They have to get their work done. They need, mentoring, tutoring, whatever it is to graduate, to make sure they get their degrees and they're not just trying to stay eligible. And I was younger than even some of the athletes I was working with. But whenever somebody would point out to me that my age might hinder my performance, and that, I would show them the actual results and say, it doesn't matter. Like I could be 50, I could be 22. If I'm doing good work and helping students graduate and helping them be self-sustaining and self-efficient and to grow as people and as students, then what do you care? Right. So that was my first job out of college, 2 years at Temple, academic support for student athletes. Worked with Fran Dunphy and the Temple men's basketball team, among many other teams there. But, it's just an example. I don't think age is really a thing, but I think, Ronnie Barnes obviously is a head athletic trainer, and that's part of the training staff and the way that the Giants manage their team, their practices. It impacts what guys' workloads are to an extent. And so he's involved in that process. So Ronnie, Joe, Brian, Aaron Wellman, everybody who's involved in that is a part of, deserving credit when the team is either healthy or their work is producing results, and then is, faced with scrutiny or accountability if things go wrong. And of course, it needs to be an ongoing evaluation of what they have done recent years to not stay as healthy as they would like to be, because that's something they need to see. Ronnie Barnes, though, long-standing with the Giants, well-respected in the organization, and revered by the Mara family. No Met says Azeez could be bored, upset that he had to play in a preseason game. No, Azeez isn't like that. Let's see what he's let's see what he does in a regular season game, says No Mets. Fair. Intel says the Giants will go 5-12. Over under, by the way, is 6.5, but stronger odds on the under at the moment in Vegas. So that was interesting to me. Intel says same team, same result. You can't place everything on a rookie receiver when you have a quarterback that's unable to lead a team. We'll see how it goes. But Intel, you're right, is putting a lot of pressure on a 20-year-old or 21-year-old now, I should say, Nabers. A2Z says, didn't want to come on as resounding negative, Pat. Really appreciate your work, but on a big picture view, we're whistling past the cemetery. Go Blue. Ouch, whistling past the cemetery. Should I change the name of this podcast to Whistling Past the Cemetery Live? A2Z, I understand where you are. And that's what I was saying about the fan base here is, listen, we can mix optimism with reality, with scrutiny, with praise here. Like, I want to bring you guys the full picture. And the full picture is you need to see more from your team. Danny doesn't like Jones, doesn't believe. We'll see if he keeps the beard. Just kidding. Obviously, the beard is a joke in the end. All right. Tommy says Lions want to win everything, even practice. To see the Giants dominate physically and close it out is important builder and factor if they can continue it into the season. No, for sure. Like I said, I felt better about the Giants coming out of that week than I did going into it overall. Savvy thinks Malik Nabers will be okay. Snack Daticus, there's a name, says, how serious is the Malik Nabers injury, Pat? I'll bet you put that name in just to make me say Snack Atticus. So thank you for that. You got me. It's a minor ankle sprain is the initial belief, Snack. That's what the Giants' initial belief is. But you have to understand, we can both report what we know at this point and also use our eyes and ears and context to say, recently, the Giants don't have a good history with initial injury reports. We heard from Joe Shane on the broadcast that Drew Lock looked like he was okay and he could have gone back into the game. Now it turns out he's missing some time, out at least a couple of weeks, according to ESPN, and he has a strained oblique and a hip pointer, a bruised hip. And then we have obviously the Evan Neal situation going back to the sprain diagnosis that turns out to be a fracture. So the initial hope is it's not serious. The initial belief is that it's a minor ankle sprain. I still think this is probably the last game action against the Lions that we see from Malik Nabers until week 1. That's not a report. That's just me believing how they'll handle it. We will see. Let's see. Danny says teams like the Commanders and Patriots doubled down on drafting rookie QBs, yet Giants are stuck with Daniel Jones for year 6. Why is this team so stuck in its way with the most important position of all sports? Danny, I did believe they were still going to draft one of those guys in the mid rounds, and they didn't. Strange situation. My well-documented kind of criticism of how they've operated in some of these key spots. So I'm with you. Hirsch, what's up, Hirsch? Good to see you, man. If you guys are late, I will have this reposted on the YouTube page, PL and NFL. You'll be able to watch the full Talkin' Ball live. You could also listen to it on Spotify and Apple. I will download it and upload it there. If you have a question or comment that you want answered, and it takes me a while to get to it, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker, and that will highlight your comment and elevate it to the top of the chat. I will, if I'm answering somebody's question as you purchase it, I see it come in the queue, the next comment or question will be yours, posted up here on Talkin' Ball Live that I will address immediately. Chronicles, what's up? Chronicles says, Pat, maybe you can explain this to me. Why was the head of security, Jerry, in the draft room? I don't know. Chronicles, I know their head of security, Jerry Mead. He has worked for Steve Tisch, going back to other companies as well. So close to ownership in that regard, and has a lot of, from my vantage point, has a lot of power and say so in how some things run in that building. So I thought that was interesting as well. All right. If you notice too, I can't get Brian Daboll on video on these arrival videos coming into MetLife Stadium without Jerry getting front and center. But Jerry's got that clean cut look, so he fits in the arrival videos too. I know you're listening, Jerry, so that's why I'm complimenting you. Chronicle says, seems like Evan Neal has been real humbled. Thank God. Yeah, listen, I keep telling people it goes both ways. He's got to play better. He knows it. And also stay healthy. And then the Giants need to better help him with diagnosis of injuries and managing his body, right? Martin Talk Sports says, say goodbye to Tommy DeVito if they try and sneak him on the practice squad. Can you explain the new 53 QB? Oh, the new third QB on 53 rule, please. Right. Yes, I will. Let me call that up so I don't get it wrong. Okay. Because the NFL's got the official language. All right. Good question. So a team may designate a bona fide quarterback as an inactive emergency third quarterback for a regular season or postseason game. The player must be listed on the game day administration report that is submitted prior to or at the 90-minute meeting, subject to the following. First, the emergency third quarterback must be on the club's 53-player roster. The player cannot be an elevated practice squad player. The club's starting quarterback and its backup quarterback must also be on the club's 53-player roster. A team must have 2 bona fide quarterbacks on its 47 or 48-player game day active list to designate an emergency third QB. A team cannot designate an emergency third quarterback if it has 3 or more quarterbacks on its 47-48 player game day active list. An emergency third quarterback is permitted to enter a game only if the club's 2 active quarterbacks are unable to play, either due to qualification or injury, including, for example, if the quarterback is unable to play and the quarterback 2 is being evaluated for an injury. Let's see. So the bottom line is, as the rule states, you are using a roster spot on your 53 man for that 53rd quarterback. So he's taking up a roster spot, but then on game days, he can be an additional player on your game day roster as an emergency third QB, if that makes sense. Good question there, Martin. D Kit says, I think we are going to see defensive tackle by committee next to Dexter Lawrence. I don't see another one that could play 3 downs. Do you? No, I agree with you, D Kit. That's why I've said that's a position of concern. Ryder Anderson, Elijah Chapman, Nacho Roches. Also, like Dexter Lawrence, you don't want to play the guy every single snap, every single down. You want to be able to withstand, without him. You got guys like Jordan Riley, DJ Davidson, whatever, but is there sufficient depth there? Do you feel good about it? Is Jordan Phillips going to be able to make the team? I think that's a huge question mark in that area. And you're right. No one has locked anything down. Hirsch says, fair to say this season will be Daniel Jones' chance to show he can be a franchise QB. Otherwise, he'll be gone and we will likely draft a QB high in the draft. Yes, Hirsch, that is well said. Omega says, Danny plays, now Nabers is out. Yeah, not what you want to see there. Not what you want to see. If you're getting Daniel Jones on the field for a game, you fail to get Nabers a target in 12 snaps in the preseason opener, even though you play him, you would like to see the ball in his hands and Daniel Jones to put it there with the first team offense. So, unfortunate if you can't get them on the field together before the regular season in a game. Martin says, like and subscribe the channel, guys. Let's help Pat out. Really appreciate you saying that, Martin. Yes, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Now, normally we do Talkin' Ball Lives on Mondays and Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will do another Talkin' Ball Live tomorrow, Monday, August 12th. This is not replacing that Talkin' Ball Live. We are going to do Mondays as well. We're going to keep it rolling. I have more podcasts coming this week. Looking forward to that with some special guests. And then I will be in Houston for the game. Reminder, guys, if you weren't here for the Detroit game, after every Giants game where I'm there in person, I come out of the locker room, I finish my work for the Daily News, and then I go on live with you guys here. It's Talkin' Ball post-game live, and I bring you everything from the locker room, from the stadium, everything I know about the team, and we can spin things forward, give you insight into what I saw, into what the players told me in the locker room, and I think is really the most fun way to unpack the game, an untraditional kind of post-game experience that I love doing here. And everybody participates, and it's a lot of fun. And it's continuing to grow. So don't miss it. All right. Bookend Tackle says the key to success for this team is the interior line playing average ball. Football is about the trenches. Bottom line hasn't changed in 40 plus years. I've been watching football. Yeah. Bookend. It's a good point. It's almost like things don't, sometimes the interior offensive line, it's almost like a referee. Like when it's doing its job, no one really talks about it. And then when it's bad, it stands out glaringly and it's hard to talk about anything else because nothing functions properly if it's not doing its job. So that's really what the interior line is like. You're absolutely right. It starts there. Brett says, hey, Pat, is Josh Azudu done playing guard? We have in practices seen him do a little guard as well as tackle. Today, I think he was, from what I saw, he was primarily a tackle. I did not watch the last series of practice because I was watching Nabers exclusively once he got hurt because that was such a big deal. But yes, it looks like they view him as a tackle. But I did talk to Josh Azudu after the game, and he said he's working on being the best tackle he can be and being the best guard he can be. So the way he was talking about his development, it sounded like they have guard and tackle both on his table and on his plate. And really, if you remember when they drafted him, his versatility between the two positions was a major part of the reason why. So I think that they view him as developing at both spots, and they're hopeful he can help them at both. But right now, they're clearly giving him the bulk of the work at tackle. And he did play right tackle today at times, not just left, with the second team O-line. Gabe says he doesn't like Jerry. He ruins everything for the fans, and the fact he has say in the building sets me off. Your head of security should not have say in personnel and front office decisions. Chronicles says, not us adding another QB because of freaking Tyree Jackson. Well, when you put it that way, you got it, Martin. Thank you for all the love. Really appreciate that. Chowski says, where do you think fans' heads will be with the organization if they have a bad year again? Is the organization treating this like a make or break season? Chowski, there's a little bit of both. And what I mean by that is the Giants organization is really working at trying to show patience, especially after last year. I mean, like, just face it, guys, no matter how the Giants spun it publicly, privately, Brian Daboll's season last year was a disaster. And the roster and what was happening with the team, especially like Evan Neal, the offensive line, the way they paid Daniel Jones and then were unprepared to protect him from basically getting ripped to shreds. I mean, the organization was in shambles coming out of last season from an organizational standpoint. You had a coaching exodus, and they have let them retool, rehire a bunch of people. They have allowed them to put out their version of the truth and their side of the story of what happened and try to put themselves in the best light. So that all reflects that they are at this point standing behind the general manager and coach, even coming out of that fire. Now, I do think, though, once the timeline progresses as it has, my view of it from talking to people and from what I've observed is that they are showing that belief behind these two, but there's a healthy amount of understanding that there's pressure if that belief and that patience is not rewarded in due time. So obviously John Mara wouldn't give us an exact timeline or a definite this amount of wins is going to do it or anything like that. But I think there's a little bit of a balance there, Chowski. I think the organization views this as a season where there does need to be significant progress, in John Mara's words. It'll be interesting to see where the tipping point is. I do think, though, fans' heads, first of all, I think fans and the organization, you'll know bad or okay or good when you see it this year, right? Like, we've seen enough bad. We've seen what it looks like when it's good, even though it hasn't been much of it lately. And we've seen okay play that shows promising versus okay play that's just hanging on, right? That, like, for example, the end of their playoff run when they play against the Eagles and they get blown out of the building. You had to view the overall season as exceeding expectations, but that game was a good example of how far they still were, and that getting to that game, they didn't belong in that class, right? And so that reflected some positives, but also some negatives and some criticisms. Chowski, I think it depends on how bad it'll get and what goes badly, right? Like Saquon having a big year in Philly, I think will have a big say. Nabers, whether he turns out as a big time player, will be a factor. Daniel Jones will be a factor. Daboll's operation, the fact that they just need to, the offensive line, how that reflects on Joe Shane, Evan Neal, his place in it. Some of the key acquisitions and upgrades that they've made. So there's a personnel side to the evaluation of fans. If it goes wrong, there would be a coaching and performance side. Frankly, Chowski, I think a lot of this season hinges on their ability to just be a modern offense and score points. Like, if they can score 25, 26 points a game, even if they're losing games because they can't stop people, you still be concerned. You want to see better game management from Daboll. You want to see better things in all these areas. But if they can just score and prove that they are a team that is going to be in every game, then you can show progress and you could look past the record towards the progress. But the offense last year was so bad and so non-functional. I think if it's bad, like that bad, fans will lose their heads, and for good reason. Danny says, I just want a QB1 I believe in. Chronicles says, shout out to the Daily News for sending Pat to Houston to cover our team for us. No doubt, Chronicles. And if you don't already, follow me on the New York Daily News, nydailynews.com/sports. You'll find all my content there on the New York Daily News website, all my writing and reporting there, as well as on X or Twitter, P Leonard NYDN, and then everywhere else I'm PL on NFL. So it's my initials, PL on NFL. So that's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, everywhere. Go follow me, subscribe if you haven't already. Like while we are live, like this video if you like what we're doing, because the YouTube algorithm, that matters. The live engagement pushes it. They recommend it to other fans. They recommend our content to people. And it's a way to bring more Giants fans in to what we are doing here. Francis says, I hope he keeps the beard, meaning Daniel Jones. Yes, the big picture is key. We need to see more in order to improve perspective. Interesting mid-August expectations are approximately 6.5 wins. And with the odds favoring the under on that as well in Vegas, minus on the under versus, I think, plus 100. I think the other day, I want to say it was either minus 135 or minus 130 or minus 165, somewhere in that range of under 6.5 and plus 100 at 6.5. You know what? Let's just look it up. Draft. Let's look up Bet Online. Let's see. I was going to go DraftKings, FanDuel. Let's see. We got the Bet Online. Let's see. All right. We got odds, NFL odds. By the way, guys, obviously we talk a lot of Giants here, but rest of NFL questions are good, as we've been talking about. We're talking about the rookie quarterbacks. I've been watching a lot of preseason football there, watching what those guys are doing. D-Kit, thanks for telling us there, weighing in about Bo Nix. I have to check out what he did. I didn't catch that, so I need to check that out as well. And then, but like fantasy football questions, for example, like that's something that I love to talk about as well. Used to do fantasy football blogging and writing and coverage for the New York Daily News. And, I can tell you that's definitely a Giants question and a Giants conversation we can have any week and any day, because if there's anything that I see on those practice fields, it's the amount of targets and looks and the usage of these different offensive weapons that we see that these players get opportunities they get in practice, which really gives you a look at how they might be used come the regular season. So the odds are right now, the Giants are plus 115 to go over 6.5 wins, and they're minus 135 to go under 6.5 wins. That's in Vegas as of this moment on August 11th at around 5 p.m. Eastern. D-Kid says, any feedback on Jake Kubas? I thought he really played well. Yeah, they like some things he did. They like some things these reserves did. Obviously, he's a developmental player. And so, yes, that's encouraging to them from the standpoint of, they were able to move in the run game, especially. That was something they really like to see. And the good thing about Kubas is that as of right now, there's not pressure on him to play, right? So there's not pressure on Kubas to be a guy who helps them solve something now. You can have him continuing to work, continue to be a reserve who develops and who can hopefully help you, as depth goes. Let's see. Bookend Tackle says, if things go bad and players lay down, that's the key. Last year, the players didn't lay down. They kept playing for Daboll. You're right. That probably saved him, Bookend, in the end. That probably saved him. Brett says, what's going on with Tamon Fox? Did he play against the Lions? He came back to practice today. He had, I believe it was a hamstring. It's either a hamstring or a quad. I think it was a hamstring. He was doing some in practice today back on the field. So hopefully he gets ramped up to the point where he can play against the Texans. Intel says it's about to be bad. Brett says you should do some football picks through the week, Pat. Exclude Giants if you have to. Oh, I don't have to exclude Giants, Brett. And actually, it's funny you say that. I used to have a betting pick segment every week on my podcast when I first launched it, but then I felt like it was fun to do, just kind of a full interview as my guest podcasts. But if you guys would like, we can do a pick segment on Talkin Ball Live, maybe every Thursday night. That could be a fun thing to do. Or maybe even do a separate episode every Friday, something like that, where we keep it exclusively fantasy and picks related. That's also something we could do. So I like that idea, Brett. Maybe we will incorporate that on Talkin Ball this year. D-Kid says, interesting that the Jets picked up Adrian Martinez to play quarterback. They have 4 QBs in camp right now. I like the Jets quarterback depth chart. Obviously, all that matters is the big guy, Aaron Rodgers. Guys, thank you so much for being here on Talkin Ball Live. It's been a lot of fun, this impromptu bonus episode. We are still going to go live on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern, so still going live on Monday. We have 2 padded practices coming this week, including a padded practice on Monday, so that we're going to learn even more on Monday. No Mets checks in as I'm about to check out with a $5 super chat. And he says, hey, Pat, definitely appreciate the content. Happy Sunday chat. Happy Sunday chat. Let's go Giants. P.S. I understand the Giants. I understand the Giants defended a screen pass. Oh man, I'm trying to get what you're saying there. Please clarify. Thank you so much for the support. Dave says, much love, Pat. Thank you. Intel says, Pat, this is the first time in a long time I have no faith in the Giants this year. Well, Intel, even if the season doesn't go well, I hope that what I can give you is both the information on why that's happening and also the silver linings. Like Intel, if you want to feel better, go listen to my interview after we're done here with Joel Thomas. And it was me and a few other reporters. I asked the bulk of the questions though, but go watch my interview with Joel Thomas here on the Talkin' Ball YouTube channel. Cause I think that's where you got to live too. Sometimes is in the information about some of the things that are going well, because maybe the end results aren't going as well as you would like. Jay Fed says Rodgers isn't playing in the preseason. That's why. Well, yeah, but Locke's out and the Giants are grooming a tight end to be their third quarterback. So I think that's his point. Omega says, good show, brother. Thank you. Brett says, thanks, Pat. Heading to the beach to find gold or bottle caps. Oh man, wish I was at the beach. Love it. Tommy says, if the O-line still has struggles, pray coaching is competent this year to understand we have to run 12 and 13 personnel, especially against playoff defenses like last year's first half of season. Yeah, you know what, Tommy? I think what you're hitting on there is that even though we know Brian Daboll doesn't want to run his offense like he did in 2022, if that's what he has to do in order to protect the ball and manage games and try to win, then that's what he has to do. But obviously that won't reflect well on their paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year or on their roster construction if he has to do that. D Kit says, you're still the man, Pat. And Dave says, you are quickly becoming my favorite Giants content creator. Dave, thank you so much for saying that. I'm starring that, pinning that comment. I really appreciate you saying that. If any other questions are in the chat when I'm done this ad read, I will answer them before I get out of here. But want to remind you, we are sponsored here on Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard and Talkin' Ball Live with Pat Leonard by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink right here, the bag over my shoulder. A natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or you access it through the QR code on your screen, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Just to be clear, too, go to boomchaga.com and instead of buying a single bag, go to the subscribe and save and type in the code TalkinBall25 and buy a single bag. You can buy that bag at the discount on the subscribe and save offer with the code, and then you can cancel your subscription if you don't want to stay subscribed. There's no commitment. You don't have to stay subscribed. That's just how they track the metrics of how many Talkin' Ballers go over to Boom Chaga. So subscribe and save offer, boomchaga.com, TalkinBall25, get that discount. We're also sponsored by Bet Online and also by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte from this all-natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. The Drip Kids says, let's see. Hey, Pat, why do people give so much credit to Barkley? If he wasn't in the New York media, he wouldn't even be talked about with below average stats. Drip, I agree that there are parts of the Barkley, perception that are overblown, but I also think, he was the engine on offense in their one playoff year since 2016. He does have home run hit ability and great talent. And also I do think, even though we'll wait and see, but he does have breakaway ability that if he gets going, gets a runway behind a strong O-line, like Philly's potentially, it could look a lot different than it looked in New York. But I understand your skepticism, but I don't think Saquon's not Christian McCaffrey, but he's not the player who's not very good that you seem to be implying. I think he's in the middle. Dave says, go enjoy your Sunday, dude. I am enjoying it. After the Lions, I do have hope because the run blocking looked good and interior improvement. Run defense scared me against the Lions bookend from a practice standpoint with the ones. Obviously, the run defense in the game with the reserves against the Lions reserves, though, was good. Chowski says, for fantasy football, keep, trade, cut. Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, Nico Collins. Ooh. I would... Let's see. That's tough. Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I would. Oh, man. I would keep Garrett Wilson, trade Puka trade Puka and cut Nico. But right now, Puka's injured. So I guess it would be cut Puka and trade Nico if that was my choice. Keep Garrett Wilson. Obviously hinging on a lot with Aaron Rodgers, right? Doesn't make it right. Just what it is, says Dave, about what they saw him at Penn State, right? Martin says, hey, Pat, I hope you can collaborate with my guys Entertainer and Bad Dog Sports. Two great guys who love the Giants. Think it would be a great episode. Hey, I'm open to it. Tell them to jump in here. And, I respect their content creating as well. Would love to do that. I'm doing a collaboration on one of our lives coming up with Authentic, who produces great content. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to doing more collabs like that, Martin. Let's see. Miz says, what's up, Pat? Miz, what's going on? If you missed what we've done here, I'm going to have this 2 hours locked and loaded for you to revisit on the YouTube channel and on Apple and Spotify. Barkley was impacted by bad line play for sure. D-Kid says, keep, trade, or cut. David Sills, Colin Johnson, Richie James. Ooh. Well, I think I love Colin Johnson as a player. I love him. I think you're keeping Colin Johnson, trading Richie James, cutting David Sills there. D-Kit killing me. Miz says 9-8. I feel the Giants will have a stronger defense up front to stop the run and stronger O-line with a good run committee. 9-10 wins. Wow. Well, that's where it starts, Miz. The wide receiver, linebacker, D-line room look to be our stronger areas of the team. Hope everyone else can catch up and play complementary football this year, says Tommy. I think linebacker is a little, I guess you're talking about outside linebacker, edge. Inside linebacker, I don't think the depth is there necessarily. No Mets, $5. Again, thank you. He says, Pat, this iPad autocorrect is trying to sabotage me. I know it was a preseason game, but the Giants finally defended a screen pass successfully. Oh, got you. Well said. Hey, baby steps, building blocks. Thank you, No Mets. Tommy says, Entertainer and Bad Dog are terrible. Whoa, Tommy, easy. All right. Be nice. Let's see. Drip Kid says, RB2 from what you have seen in camp. Porter or Miller? Porter. I think you're talking about Tyrone Tracy Jr.? I would say RB2 is Tyrone Tracy Jr. and then Miller 3. That's how I view it. But also they're kind of like, to me, they're 2A and 2B right now. It's kind of like Miller is a speed guy who also has shown some toughness and a big playability. Tracy is more like bigger bodied and can kind of slip through tackles and holes and kind of dance and fall forward, which I like. I also think Elijah Chapman has some potential like him. You don't want to lean too hard on an undrafted rookie defensive tackle. So that's why I think Miz, encouraging. And also you want to see a guy like that in a rotation to provide you with solid depth, right? Hopefully doesn't get forced up the depth chart into spots and workloads that are above his level, Let's see. Better chance of making the team, Pat? Bryce Ford Wheaton or Alex Johnson? I don't have either of them on my final 53, D-Kit. Let's see. Martin says, Authentic is a great guy, too. He's done work with Entertainer and Bad Dog Sports. He knows his stuff. Love the guy. Nice. D-Kit says, please do the collaborations on a different pod. This one doesn't need any improvements or distractions. Just let Pat cook. Okay, DK, it's good insight. I mean, I'm not going to load all of the Talking Ball lives up every time with a collaboration. I just feel like every once in a while, as a thank you to the content creators and the fans who are being my biggest supporters and who I also respect and want to give love to on their channels as well, do those collaborations, but we won't replace everyone, And if we can do them extra, we'll do them as extras. Dave Z says, defending against a screen pass is fine, but I'm desperate to see the O-line be able to handle a simple stunt. Oh, except for Authentic. All right. So you're in for Authentic. Got you. All right. Tommy says, you would do a better job with Big Blue Crew and Big Pat Sports Talk, or even Big Dash, way more knowledgeable about the game. Okay. Yeah. No, but let's respect all the hard work these guys and everyone's putting in. Chris P says, how are we feeling about Eric Gray? I know there's been some issues with pass blocking. Has that gotten any better? I don't think you're putting him in to trust him as a pass blocker, Chris. If anything, I've seen them use tight ends as blockers when they can, in addition to some of the running backs. Gray's interesting because I feel like he was slipping and definitely the clear 4. I still think he's the 4, but that game against the Lions obviously really helped his case. So maybe does that lead to them keeping 4, especially him? If a guy's showing some signs of progress and growth and he's a draft pick in his second year, hard to imagine the GM is cutting him, Another guy I raved about when we drafted him can make an impact at linebacker, Beavers. Injury was a setback. Yeah, he's made some plays with the reserves. We'll see what he can do, if he gets more meaningful snaps for sure. Tommy says, definitely just let Pat cook for sure. D-Kid also likes Dash's content. All right. Achilles says, I have a family member who worked for the Giants, and they said Malik will be fine by week 1. Good insight there, Achilles. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, so here, Achilles, thanks for bringing that up as we kind of wrap this up, because the Nabers injury, this is why I wanted to go live in part, because there was a lot of information that came out of practice, okay? And then when Nabers gets hurt, I'm just sharing people, and other reporters at practice are sharing what happens. And then you see it get conflated with, some people say it's really not serious at all. There's nothing happening. There's people saying that he's not injured. Like, the guy's hurt, right? It turns out, yes, he sprained an ankle and they have to do more testing, right? So to me, the way I saw it from what I observed and the information I obtained was that I don't know if it will become more serious, but the way I viewed it is, and this is what we said at the start of the show, most likely this means we haven't seen it. We're not going to see him again in a preseason game the rest of this spring, the summer, and that they're going to hold him out for a time, ramp him back up, and that you hope there's no worse diagnosis that jeopardizes week 1. But week 1's a month away, right? So a minor ankle sprain, you can be ready for week 1 and better in week 1. But Achilles also, again, and that's great insight from Achilles. Thank you, Achilles. But you also have to, again, remember the recent history of Giants saying guys have had certain injuries, and then what we find out actually is the follow-up test could show something different. And also the immediate reactions in between, like right now in the middle of the afternoon where he just had the injury in the morning, it's still too early to have all the final tests and results and information on exactly what it is to set the timeline, right? And even then, they try to hedge on timelines. So, it'd be interesting to see what Brian Daboll says, because usually he's very careful with injuries when he wants to be. And so he shared some injury updates on some guys, but also some others he keeps close to the vest. So I would expect he's not going to share full information on this one. But it'll be interesting to talk to him on Monday. Let's see. All right. D-Kid says, Braylon Trice tore his ACL and is out for the Falcons. I bring this up because they passed on Dallas Turner and Latu to draft Penix, and were ecstatic they were able to still get Trice in the third. Interesting. Falcons, another team that sometimes they make decisions that just make you shake your head, Another case of a first-time GM. Drip Kid says, Pat, what do you think they're going to do with Slayton and Hyatt at wide receiver 2? I still think Slayton's the more reliable player. Hyatt is the deep threat. Underneath, it's Slayton. Well-rounded receiver, it's Slayton. The chemistry with Daniel Jones, it's Slayton. The big playability Slayton has, but Jalen Hyatt is the burner downfield. So I think, I still see Slayton as it's a top 4. Like the Giants receiver room is a top 4. That's really what it is. Dave Z says, cross your fingers, it's not a high ankle. Yeah, looked like he was touching the top of his left foot on the side, right? So we talked earlier about maybe it's a swelling sprain. To me, initially, it looked like more the top of his foot than his ankle. We'll see. You also lose time with him on the field for sure, like you wanted to see him and Jones versus the Texans, no doubt. Guys, thank you so much for being here. That was a 2-hour bonus impromptu Talking Ball Live, and I couldn't stop the entire time. There were questions rolling in. There were super chats rolling in. We're still going to do our Talking Ball Live Monday, August 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Giants have 2 padded practices this week. Then they also have a game on Saturday in Houston against the Texans. I will be there. So we will have our live chat on Monday, August 12th, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will also have our Talking Ball Live on Thursday, August 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then we will do a Talking Ball post-game live on Saturday afternoon, right from Houston, from the Houston Texans press box after that game, before I head back to the airport and fly home. Oh, we have more questions rolling in here as I'm wrapping it up. Let's see. Dave Z says, you rock, Pat. No Met says, great stream. D-Kit says, this chat has raised its game, Pat. I appreciate you saying that. D-Kit, No Mets, Dave. Let's see. I appreciate you guys really saying that. Lot of praise, good comments, good vibes today. Tuto, Joel, D-Kit, Peter, JC, Peter again, D-Kit again, Peter again, No Mets, and No Mets a final time. Those were the super chats. Big shout outs to you guys for being such huge supporters. And Drip Kids closes us out by saying, Pat, thanks for all the great insight. Remember, everybody, go watch my videos, interviews with Joel Thomas, the running backs coach, and Jerome Henderson, the DBs coach. I also have an interview publishing soon with Neal at the podium today. I think you'll love watching that. Some humility, understands where he stands, and understands he's not owed anything in his quest to rise up the Giants depth chart and prove he can play again. And at this point, this is Pat Leonard here on a Sunday afternoon, sitting with you, telling you guys about what I saw at East Rutherford Giants facility, Quest Diagnostics Training Center. Malik Nabers, Drew Lock, Evan Neal, all the information earlier in this chat. If you missed it, go check it out on the channel or on Apple and Spotify. Boom Chaga, Bet Online, Estate 98. Thanks for sponsoring and making this possible. This is Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News here on the Believe Network and on YouTube, signing off. Thank you, everybody.